Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins here, along with my brother Brent. We've got some new UFO videos just in, including an interview that I recently had with Dr. Michael Salla. We're going to discuss the ramifications of artificial intelligence and Space Force, including the technology behind it. So buckle up, everybody. Let's just roll this first video that has come into our email. A Lockheed C-130 Hercules has a close encounter with the craft. Take a look at this incredible video. Watch this. So we're slowing the video down and we can see this object come into frame, and clearly it passes behind the C-130 Hercules, indicating that whatever this object is, it's there and it's quite large and it's moving very fast. This isn't an insect or a drone passing quickly in front of the camera lens. No, this is something that is off at a distance, and the C-130 Hercules is a huge aircraft. So we could see that we have these kind of similar craft that have visited other commercial airlines in the past. But what we're looking at here with this C-130 and other airliners, there's something in our sky that's keeping a close eye on our military and commercial airliners. So look at this again. Blake, this one's pretty incredible. Look at the speed this thing just zipped by, and it is large. I would estimate the size to be probably a large SUV, because these C-130s could pack tanks and a whole bunch of gear in their fuselage. It's a massive airplane, like you just said. This thing screams by this airplane, and it almost looks like the C-130 does these banking maneuvers just to avoid it when you clearly see whatever this object is. It seems so close to it, it almost seems like it's almost going to impact the C-130. It's an amazing shot, whatever this is. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any record out there, and I'm wondering if there's any major media coverage of this, because this is involving the military and close proximity to what they want to call a UAP. But what is the meta propulsion behind this vehicle? That's the question. And why is this in close proximity to the craft itself? Was it in trying to engage it? Absolutely stunning footage, and we're so happy that we're sharing this with you, and we're doing this live premiere. So give us a big thumbs up if you're joining us, and tell your friends Third Phase of Moon's going right now, sharing the UFO video. So let's get to this next one, guys. Take a look at this. This seems something that maybe people might claim is biblical. Watch. We have this spirit, maybe one would say, or some kind of organic being. What are we looking at here? Brent, what's your thoughts? Yeah, we see this translucent craft. It's being highlighted by the sun. It could be a possibility of some sort of balloon. But we're looking at this thing, and it has this unique quality. People could also say that this looks like a figure, some sort of humanoid just floating up there in the sky. You could read a lot into this, but the only thing I'm saying right now is what we're seeing is legit. Whatever's there is not put in by CGI. It's actually up there in the sky, and it's quite large too. And it's remaining totally stationary. I don't see anything suspending. It's not suspended from anything, neither a tether from underneath. It seems that it's just hanging there. In an historical sense, there have been other captures that resemble this exact same kind of feature. In 2006, December, the same thing was captured. Is this the same phenomenon that we're witnessing here? Because there are these beings in the sky, in my opinion, possibly life forms that we're not aware of. Is this what we're looking at, or is this something interdimensional? Maybe, possibly some organic technology that we're not used to. I don't know. I'm just saying, this is kind of crazy stuff, Brent. Yeah, it's large, and I'm estimating, again, looking at these UFOs, they come in all shapes and sizes, and this is proof of that. I'd estimate the size to be probably about 30 to 40 feet, maybe a little larger than that. But look how it just stays stationary and just hovers there. You could take judgment with the wire And you get a good estimation that this thing's just remaining static in the sky. There's really no fluctuation with it. Like a balloon would be kind of wavering in the wind and oscillating. This thing remains static. Absolutely, Brent. Guys, that's joining us right now in the live premiere. Appreciate you guys all piling in. I can see that it's going to be a great episode. So, like I said, Dr. Michael Salla, we spoke with him recently in regards to some of the stuff that's happening in China. And recently they announced that they've created new technology that will bring new hypersonic craft to a playing field that we are far behind in the United States. So let's roll right now with Dr. Michael Salla. It's our pleasure to have Dr. Michael Salla, the author of many books, and his latest, The Rise of the Red Dragon, the secrets behind the Chinese secret space program, what's going on over there, and what's going on with our own Space Force and the technology behind it. Dr. Michael Salla, thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon.
Pleased to be here with you.
The news doesn't stop in regards to reverse engineered technology from ET crashes from around the world. What's going on with this secret space program in China right now? How did they gain these assets?
Well, when we look at China's secret space program, we need to understand that it goes back to the 1940s because the lead Chinese scientist, Dr. Shenzhou Shen, actually was a full professor at Caltech and JPL, and actually was one of the lead scientists working with the US Air Force to understand the retrieved flying saucer craft that were brought back from Germany, and also the crashed extraterrestrial craft from New Mexico. And so this Chinese scientist was working for the US Air Force right up until 1950. And it was then that he was basically accused of being a communist spy and deported back to China. And after a 5-year legal battle, he moved back to China in 1955 in a prisoner exchange organized by President Eisenhower. And he then basically set about helping the Chinese set up not only a conventional rocket program that we know about in terms of their satellite launches and their ballistic missile weapon systems and their lunar probes and so forth, but also a secret space program using electromagnetically powered craft. And this was something that he helped pioneer way back in the 40s and 50s with his work with the Air Force that he took back with him to China in 1955.
So the scientists that headed back from China that once worked for our own United States government went back to China, revealed our secrets to that government. But how does that answer the question to the technology that they obtained? Were there crashed UFOs or flying saucers in the region of the Red State?
Well, what happened was that when he went back to China, he was the expert on these kinds of really advanced technologies that were being discovered. The Chinese government were very incredulous about the whole idea of UFOs. In fact, Chairman Mao thought UFOs were a Western trick. So whenever there were reports of flying saucers and crashes and all that sort of thing, I mean, he thought that this was all part of some kind of attempt to manipulate China, because China was technologically kind of like behind the United States and behind the Soviet Union. But this Chinese scientist, Dr. Shenzhou Shen, I mean, he was the expert, so he would go along and he would look at whatever was retrieved. And even though the Chinese communist authorities basically really poo-pooed the whole idea that there was any real substance to this whole UFO field, nevertheless, scientists like Dr. Shen, they kept on accumulating data until the time came when China would have enough resources to start to develop a reverse engineering program, because their ballistic missile program and their satellite program in the 60s and 70s were very, very expensive. And China, was basically going through chaos, the Cultural Revolution. So it was only until the early 1990s when China under Deng Xiaoping basically became industrialized and was able to generate enough funds for developing a secret space program using a lot of these electromagnetically propelled principles that Dr. Shen had been discussing and wanting to implement for decades.
So the technology that was experimented with by the US and then later through this Chinese man that headed back to China, going over the technology in the 50s, now basically 70 years later, where has this technology gone? And are we seeing it in the skies today? Are we seeing that there is a retaliation due to the Space Force enactment by our own president in counter to the red state?
Well, when we're looking at China, we really kind of start looking at that period from, say, early 1990s up until around 2012 as the period when they really put a lot of effort into studying and reverse engineering all of the information that they had on these advanced propulsion systems that were part of these crashed UFOs that China had learned about from Dr. Shen in the US, that China was able to recover from its own territories in terms of places like Tibet or the Gobi Desert, and also the legends of Shambhala. I mean, there's an account that in 1970, both China and the Soviet Union actually invaded a UFO base belonging to the inner Earth, to an inner Earth civilization, and that was in Western Mongolia, and that happened in 1970. So there's stories that the Chinese retrieved these flying saucers that the Soviets and the Chinese saw in the skies in the border regions, and that each thought that the other was using for espionage purposes, but eventually they tracked it all down to this UFO base in Western Mongolia, and first the Russians and then the Chinese invaded that base, and basically they fought over what was there and took as much of it as they could with them.
So the invasion of Shambhala, where did the materials come from? Can you go into a little bit more detail on this?
Sure. When we're looking at legends of Shambhala and Agartha, I mean, there are a number of Westerners who traveled to the remote regions of China and Mongolia, that whole Gobi Desert region, kind of in the early 1920s and 30s. One was Ferdinand Ossendowski. He was a former White Russian officer. And another one was the painter, spiritual guru Nicholas Roerich. And both of them found these legends about Agartha. Both of them interviewed monks, Tibetan monks, because in Mongolia belongs to the Tibetan branch of Buddhism. So Ossendowski in particular spent a lot of time with the Bogd Khan in Mongolia, and he's the third highest ranking Tibetan Buddhist cleric. First you have the Dalai Lama, then you have the Panchen Lama, then you have the Bogd Khan, who traditionally rules over Mongolia. So Ossendowski was with him, and basically the Bogd Khan gave Ossendowski access to all of the library of the Mongolian Buddhist clan or the Mongolian Buddhist religion, and in that he saw these ancient texts talking about Agartha, and spoke to monks who told him about Agartha, and it was an ancient civilization that dated back 60,000 years ago, when there was catastrophes on the surface of the planet, and the priests of that era took the elites underground into these safe caverns, into these areas where they basically built them out using advanced technologies that they had at the time. And so that civilization today we know of as Agartha. And so this is something known to Tibetan Buddhists, both in Mongolia and in Tibet. And both the Soviet authorities and the Chinese Communist authorities, both of them were really interested in this because they knew that there was some truth to this, that there was evidence that this underground civilization existed, and they wanted to kind of find out where it was, and they wanted to kind of get their hands on the technology. And so that was really an important part of the background to what China currently has in its possession, that it spent a lot of time accumulating records and data about these ancient civilizations, stories of extraterrestrial contact, and even kind of like extraterrestrial artifacts that they were able to retrieve, and to kind of like put all this together to be studied and then eventually reverse engineered for an indigenous secret space program.
Incredible. So, 60,000 years ago, there was a civilization that wanted to escape of some kind of impact on Earth, and then they were able to build an underground city to protect their people through the help of extraterrestrial technology. Are these underground bases still accessible to this day?
Well, those legends are basically part of many cultures that in different cultures talk about catastrophes on the surface, and that certain peoples were able to escape. I mean, the Hopi talk about being given refuge in subterranean civilizations by the ant people. So these are legends that you find in many cultures, and in the Buddhist Tibetan religion, you find similar legends, but they talk about Agartha, Shambhala, and I think that this basically is a pattern that repeats itself. Whenever there is a catastrophe about to happen on the surface, those with advanced technologies are able to kind of get foreknowledge of this. They have a little bit of warning, and so they basically establish themselves in underground cavern systems, taking a lot of technologies, kind of like what we have today in the whole continuity of government program. This is based on the idea that if a catastrophe happens on the surface, or that the country will be able to survive by having the government relocate into some safe haven under the ground. Well, this is a similar idea. We're probably talking about continuity of species, because if you have a pole shift, for example, like I think what happened 60,000 years ago was that there was a pole shift, and that the elites of that era knew that a pole shift was about to happen, and so they put a lot of resources into building or finding and building underground caverns where they could relocate a lot of the people, a lot of the technologies, so that they could then ride out this catastrophe. So when it did happen and there was a pole shift, you had the elites from that civilization, and some people call it Mu, that civilization that inhabited, say, what today is China. People give it different names, and other names are Pan, but in Asia, in that area of Asia, you had the Pan, you had the Mu civilizations. They could have been civilizations that went underground in different eras during pole shifts. We know that a pole shift happened around 60,000 years ago, and there have been other pole shifts. One that happened around 10,000 years ago, and each time there's a pole shift, you have people going underground. So the last one that happened around 11,000 years ago, that was the end of Atlantis. And so even today there's legends of the Atlanteans having gone underground and established bases in places like Telos in Mount Shasta.
So these pole shifts, aren't we kind of going through a magnetic pole shift? As of right now, there's been some changes, some indications that there is a pole shift in effect?
A pole shift, we need to keep in mind that there's two pole shifts that are relevant here. One is a magnetic pole shift, and the other is a geophysical pole shift. The Earth's axis of rotation actually physically moves. So we are experiencing a magnetic pole shift at the moment, but ancient texts and even scientific reports studying pole shifts historically note that before these geophysical pole shifts, there was also a magnetic pole shift just before it. And so that magnetic pole shift somehow is part of this geophysical pole shift. So first you have the magnetic pole shift, and once you have that occurring, at a certain point, something triggers a geophysical pole shift. Exactly what that is, people aren't sure. Is it an asteroid strike? Is it the kind of like the ice sheets melting off very quickly because of something like an asteroid strike? Or is it solar flares, a micronova? There's something that triggers a pole shift. You have Charles Hapgood, who wrote about the Earth's shifting crust, a book about that in the 50s that was endorsed by Albert Einstein. So there's a lot of good scientific data saying that pole shifts do occur. This is something that has historically happened on a number of occasions, but scientists aren't quite sure what triggers it. But we do know from whistleblower and insider accounts that the scientific community and the elites of our modern era are very frightened of the possibility of a pole shift or an extinction level event happening on the Earth, and they've been trying to build these underground bases and cities for some time as a refuge.
Yeah, there would be some kind of indicator if there were a magnetic shift happening right now, then the trigger of the geological shift behind it, you would expect that our governments would be preparing for that. And definitely something to consider and a little worrisome, if you ask me. Let's just hopefully that we don't have any of these massive events anytime in the near future. But in regards to your new book, The Rise of the Red Dragon, you've done a lot of research in China. Can you tell us what people are going to expect when they read your book?
Well, I think the thing that people are going to really be kind of like really shocked to learn is the extent to which China's space program is really connected to what happened in the 1940s with the establishment of the US Air Force's secret space program. Because the person who helped set up the US Air Force's secret space program, one of the lead scientists in that was Chinese, and he was deported to China in 1955, and he helped the Chinese develop their conventional space program. And what people are going to learn is that China has for a very long time been very aware of the US having a secret space program. And so they put a lot of resources into developing their economy and encouraging the West into investing into China in terms of high technology and really making it look as though China was opening up to the West. But in fact, as I discuss in the book, there are a number of China-US experts that say that this was really all a sham from the very beginning. China has never been really interested in opening up to the West. China has been conducting a stealth war modeled on the period of the Warring States, which is a period that occurred from around 400 to 200 BC, when China's warring kingdoms were all consolidated into one dynasty. That was the first Chinese emperor, the Emperor Qin, and that these concepts are being used today to build a secret space program by infiltrating, by conducting espionage, by kind of like luring Western companies in to invest in China so that the Chinese have the capital to secretly build a secret space program. And I know from the research approximately where the Chinese are building their secret space program. It's in an area of Inner Mongolia. So it's in an area of the Gobi Desert. And this is where they have bases with large underground facilities, kind of like Area 51 in the United States. But in China, this is called the Dingjing Test and Training Base. And this is in the Gansu province, which is right next to China's premier satellite launch facility called Zhuquan. And so this is where China is secretly building and assembling and deploying its secret space program. And we know from different insiders that China's space program has cruisers, destroyers that are capable of basically destroying America's satellite system overnight.
It's interesting what the Chinese have done with IPs and the technology that we create over here in the United States and then utilize it to their own benefit in their country. But my question to you is, the Chinese, the government, in regards to the quantum physics and the quantum computing, Google has recently said that we've reached quantum supremacy, but in reality, the Chinese government are investing much more money and funding into quantum computing and are going to leave us far behind in that technology. What are the ramifications of this?
Well, that's a really important question is, how far is China going in terms of AI and quantum computing? There's a Chinese scholar, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, has written a really important book called AI Superpowers, and basically that discusses China versus Silicon Valley. And even though Silicon Valley was the first to establish things like quantum computing and AI, and has been really the pioneer. China has caught up very, very quickly. And by 2025, China will start to be more advanced when it comes to AI and quantum computing than Silicon Valley. And by 2030, China will be definitely the world leader when it comes to AI and quantum computing. And the danger here, and this is why, in the subtitle to the book, I talk about the threat posed by China's secret space program, is that China is using AI in its space program. It's weaponizing AI because basically it understands that the US has a long history in developing a secret space program. It has a lot of assets deployed around the planet and in space, and that China can never hope to catch up by merely replicating what the United States has done. But what China is trying to do is achieve an asymmetric advantage, which means that in areas where your enemy is weak, you deploy all your resources. So what the Chinese perceive is that when it comes to space, the US really just doesn't have all that much developed in space. I mean, they have a very small secret space program in space compared to the US economy and its size. America's secret space program is not that big. Maybe they've got a few fleets, squadrons of, say, anti-gravity craft. So the Chinese understand that if they invest significant resources into developing a secret space program with destroyers, cruisers, and other large vehicles utilizing electromagnetic propulsion systems and directed energy weapons and all of these other kind of advanced electromagnetic systems, that China can get an advantage over the United States. And AI, quantum computing, is something that the Chinese are forging ahead in because they want to develop these, because this is a key part of their asymmetric military strategy to establish dominance over the United States by, say, 2030.
Yeah, the race is on, isn't it, Dr. Michael Salla? Can you tell us, you've done a lot of research, you've written many books. Some of the information that I'm hearing from you today is information I haven't heard from ever before anywhere else. It's incredible the insight that you get. How are people able to get your book, read it, and get this word out? It's important.
Right, well, you can just go to Amazon.com. At the moment, there's paperback and Kindle versions that are available on Amazon. There'll soon be an Audible edition, and all people can just come to my website, exopolitics.org, and they can read a little bit about the book there, and get copies through my website.
The rise of the Red Dragon, and what is going on over there in China, and the information and the technology and the advancement. It seems that we're gonna be left behind if we don't get on the ball. We're gonna be working on a documentary with Dr. Michael Salla. We're excited. We've already done some shooting, and some of the information you're about to hear in this new documentary is incredibly mind-blowing. Dr. Michael Salla, what are you gonna be doing next?
Well, I'm going to be doing some webinars in the future, so people can just go to my website, exopolitics.org, to learn about the webinars. And I'm now doing research on Russia's secret space program. So that'll be my next book project that'll come out in 2021. And I think it really complements this recent book on China's space program.
Absolutely. We're going to be supplying the original link to Dr. Michael Salla's website, how you could get his book, and his YouTube channel when he starts doing these webinars. We're looking forward to it. Dr. Michael Salla, you be safe over there. You keep in touch. We're looking forward to your next book, and we're going to be releasing this new documentary that we shot with Dr. Michael Salla among some heavy hitters in the field of ufology. Michael Salla, you be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, and aloha.
All right, we encourage everybody to take a look at Dr. Michael Salla's latest book, The Rise of the Red Dragon. It's an incredible read. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that as well. And the skies. We've got more videos coming in from the public, people like you shooting strange things, and we're going to be revealing it to you right here on Third Phase Moon. Keep your eyes on the skies, everybody. We're not alone. We'll see you again next time.